Every year, HLTV asks the top 20 players to make a bold prediction as to which youngster is going to have a breakout year or really step up heading up into the new year. And to kickstart 2023, I want to start a little two-part series. The first being, of course, this video, which is my top 5 bold predictions for 2023, with a few honorable mentions as well. And, of course, the second, which will come out on Friday of next week, so a week from today, is just a look back on the pros bold predictions of 2022 and just to see how they ended up panning out. Now, before we get started, if you're new here, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. I'll be releasing new videos every single week, including interviews with pros, podcasts, and a lot more to come as well. So I'd really appreciate the support. Now, to kickstart the list, I have a few little check marks which I need to include, which will determine who gets put in the list. First of all, they can't already be in the top 20 teams. This means no Wonderful, no Patsy, no Manesi, no Zershin, but also no Stair or Law and X, as in my eyes, all of these players have already done enough to be considered an elite CSGO player and are already on the right trajectory and are not a kind of a bold prediction, so to say. And secondly, they have to be under the age of 20. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's the metric that HLTV uses for their bold predictions, and arguably anybody over that age is already considered to be relatively experienced by this point, or at least have a decent amount of experience under their belt. Now, to briefly mention as well, I have actually mentioned all of these players at some point within the last few months on the podcast that we run regarding CSGO 2.5 Talent alongside my lovely friends, Dat Paladin and Trav CS. So if anyone's craving some more CSGO content, go and check out 2.5 Talent. The link is somewhere below and it will be around on the channel. We do basically a podcast every couple of weeks, so it's worth checking out. Very in-depth, especially towards the tier 2 side of things. So go and check it out. But without further ado, let's start with number 5. Now, of course, as of today, the 1st of January, the day of recording, HLTV has released an article detailing a swap between 00 Nation and 9Z, directly swapping the two AWPers, NQZ and Try. Now, a lot of people would quite rightfully put NQZ in this position, but I'm going to lean the other way. I'm going to go with Try as my number 5 on the list, and I think of the two, Try is going to be the better performer, and let me detail why. First of all, back when Try played with 9Z before moving to 00 Nation, he averaged a 1.29 rating as a 17-year-old, which is absolutely bonkers. He will be reuniting with the pieces that set him up to be such a successful breakout player in that of Max and Zach, plus arguably better players around him now in 9Z than that of 00 Nation. And of course, when you look at the two teams, right, it's absolutely safe to say that Try is going to have way less pressure without legends like Cold Zero and Taco breathing down his neck, and a return to kind of that comfort zone in which he performed unbelievably back in 2021. This will allow him the freedom to let loose, like back in 2021, and my penultimate reason, he is much less of a risk in comparison to the huge shoes that NQZ now has to fulfill within 00 Nation, which is kind of partly the reason that I've lent in favor of Try over NQZ. And of course, finally, Try is only 18 years of age. I know there's been a lot of talks about him maybe kind of not fulfilling his potential, but he's got so much time to bounce back from the slight setback set on him, when he was performing within 00 Nation. And we know he can perform in a dominant way as well. So the sky is only the limit for this young AWPer, especially on a domestic scale. Looking back at stats for the year, whilst it was a slightly less exciting year than that of 2021, he still walked away with a pretty respectable 1.13 HLTV rating over the last 12 months. At major tournaments, he also racked up some respectable performances at a time as well where the 00 Nation side generally was struggling. And once he goes back to that comfort zone of 9Z, I would not be surprised if they were one of those teams fighting and contending for a major spot at the Blast Major and whatever our second major holder is of the year into 2023.
Is that Max and Try are both on this side, and Masuda walks in unsuspecting.
Let's see, they can leave him here.
Yeah, and he comes back, drops the bomb, a third! Try turns his attention back around, and Max will cover flank. Try, 4 kills, 4 shots, that is all he needs.
Entering my list at number 4 is the young Ukrainian of Wrinkle. Artem Morez is someone who has continuously impressed me, both within the tier 2 online space, but also on an international stage. But to many, this would be considered a little bit of a wild card pick, so to say. But let me explain why I think there's, something special about this young AWPer. Since joining Bait in August of 2021, the squad has continued to punch well above their weight, and Wrinkle individually plays like a player with experience well above his years. In terms of statistics, he has an extremely respectable 1.19 over the last 12 months, and Bait reached new highs as they qualify for the IEM Road to Rio closed RMR, Whilst they weren't able to qualify for the major itself, they ended on a record of 2 wins and 3 losses, with the first being an overtime thriller against respectable Tier 2 side Ecstatic, and the second being a dominant display against Tier 1 stalwarts, none other than Fnatic themselves, where they battered them 16-9 on Ancient, and I had the pleasure of casting it. Many comparisons have been made about the young AWPer, like that of fellow Ukrainian youngster and a name previously mentioned in this video, that of Wonderful, now playing with Team Spirit. And it's hard not to see the direct comparisons. They have some strength behind them. I mean, similarities in age, playstyle, performance all ring out on such a positive note for Wrinkle that one has to expect great things to come in the future from him. It does also make you think that maybe Wrinkle was kind of treading the same path, and given the same sort of opportunities and chances, he would perform in the same way. It's safe to say that there's a bright future for this young man, and with the depth and development of the CIS scene, I can see him being given a shot at a better team and proving his worth regularly on an international scale. And with the way in which CIS is set up with so many teams competing at that high level, and the look and hunt for AWP is always ever changing, I think Wrinkle can be given a shot. Coming in at number 3 on my list, I'm going to go with a Finnish superstar, that of Yimfat. Somehow, someway, Mal's NXT continued to find these diamonds in the rough and polish them into astoundingly good CSGO players, and Yimfat is yet another prime example. He's following in the footsteps of those before him, like Torzi, Zershin, JDC, and Shuhei, who all now fly the flag very high for the Academy roster. Since roster changes were made for Mal's NXT just prior to the start of the We Play Academy League Season 6, we've seen a completely revitalized and fully unleashed Yimfat, and my god is this young man scary. The star player playing star roles for his roster put up a monstrous 1.28 rating for Season 6 of the Academy League, despite Mal's NXT finishing only in 4th. And to be honest, we have seen this story before in the Academy League. Just like previous Mal's NXT counterpart, the young Finn is following the footsteps of Zershin, who is a bold prediction of many in 2022, and for damn good reason. In the We Play Academy League, Zershin dropped a scary 1.41 in the Season 2 online era, where they finished first, and then continued that success on LAN with a 1.32. Dominance as an individual, as a team, and it seems to be that the young Finn is on exactly the same trajectory. The younger brother of ex-Ents-man Sergey himself has absolutely zero intentions of living in the shadow of his older brother, and with the current trajectory that he's on, he has everything in the making to outshine him on an international stage at this rate. I'd be very surprised to see Yimfat still with Mal's NXT into 2023, and not on an up-and-coming Tier 2 roster, or maybe even higher. While he does have a VAC ban that ends at the end of this month, end of January 2023, the second it's lifted, it is only onwards and upwards for this young guy. And lastly, God knows what they have in the water in that Salo household, because not only has Yeri Sergey Salo himself been touted as one of the best youngsters in the world at one point, and even being recognized for it, being crowned 13th best player in the world in 2019. Now his 16-year-old brother, Yimi Salo, is on exactly the same trajectory. I'm super excited to see what Yimfat can bring in towards 2023. Coming into the number 2 spot is a player that our previous nominee of Yimfat would be all too familiar with. It's Na'Vi Jr.'s very own Hedrick. Now, Na'Vi Jr.'s success rate in, kind of plucking out young talent is absolutely phenomenal, just as good as Mal's NXT, and Hedrick seems to be destined to follow in exactly the same footsteps as those who have gone before, like that of Bit and Manesi, who have both comfortably made the step up into Tier 1 CSGO. And he also has some decent Tier 1 experience under his belt as well, as he stood in for the main team back in Blast Fall groups, and he took on teams like G2, Liquid, Complexity, and to walk away with that with a 1.12 rating, it's extremely respectable. Overall stats-wise, Hedrick is rocking a phenomenal 1.27 rating in the last 12 months, with an equally as scary 1.36 in the 14 maps he played for Na'Vi Jr. as they finished 3rd overall in the We Play Academy League. And in the same fashion that I mentioned Zershin in the Yimfat section, it's safe to use G2's very own ex-Na'Vi Jr. man of Manesi as an example here. Cast your minds back to 2021, where young Ilya Osipov, aka Manesi, was dropping a 1.64 rating despite finishing 5th in Season 1, a 1.37 rating despite finishing 3rd in Season 2 online, and a 1.30 rating in the LAN finals in the We Play Academy League way back in 2021. We have seen dominant players in the Academy Leagues prove their worth despite team-wide underperformances, and Hedrick seems to be in exactly the same position. He was the highest rated player in the most recent season of the We Play Academy League and continues to attract the attention of big, heavy hitting teams. Most notably, recent reports suggest that Hedrick is booking himself a ticket to Sweden as we speak, as none other than NIP have come knocking for the youngster and are interested in bolstering their firepower with him, and in the same fashion that G2 did with Manesi. And in the same fashion that G2 had an AWP problem, which was solved by an ex-Na'Vi junior member, the recently benched and transferred Hedrick seems to be a carbon copy of this exact same plan. And honestly, for NIP, I think this would be a great signing. They've had recent AWP problems, and with Estag now being benched as well, I think Hedrick is a perfect replacement. The sky seems to be the absolute limit for this young Ukrainian, and I cannot wait to see him inevitably step up into Tier 1, because it isn't a question of if, but when. Now, before we get to number 1, I wanted to throw out a few honourable mentions, so to say, who didn't quite make the top 5, but I believe could have an amazing year heading into 2023 if they continue playing at the same level they're at. And I've also included one who is just outside of that age 20 metric, which I'll get to in just a moment. First, to support my UK boys, both Cypher and Azuru have been a pleasure to watch as a UK CSGO kind of domestic caster, and having the chance to talk to them in person and see their progression, not only in their CS ability, but as a person too, without a doubt in my mind, shows that they have an extremely, extremely bright future. And with how well they played in 2022, heading into 2023, I have no doubt that we're going to see them either dominate on a domestic scale or potentially even internationally as well. As mentioned earlier, NQZ is definitely a name that has to crop up. With his transfer to 00 Nation, he'll get to play with some of the best in terms of legendary names in the South American Counter-Strike scene, that of Cold Zero and Taco. And at only 17 years of age, it is without a doubt in my mind that NQZ will impress into 2023. And I expect to see him on an international stage. And it does put up a very interesting debate of who's going to turn out better out of NQZ and Try, because both have really set themselves up for success heading into 2023. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, I set the age limit to 20 years of age, because it's the same metric that HLTV uses, but there's one player that I kind of just want to include in here who plays within the Academy League who has continued to impress me, and that's Artfrost from Spirit Academy. I got the chance to cast him in the last couple of seasons of the We Play Academy League, and the performances he's put up have been absolutely brilliant. A 1.24, a 1.16, and a 1.21 respectively in the last 2 seasons of the Academy League, with back-to-back second-place finishes, is pretty good. I would not be surprised to see him make the step up into towards Tier 2 within 2023, potentially even higher as well, as he's one of the best and most consistent talents within the Academy League, and a real kind of diamond in the rough that Spirit Academy have kind of polished into their own and being a real powerhouse behind a lot of their success. You know, he is only 21 years of age, which is still young, but he's not eligible for the bold prediction, hence why I couldn't include him, but I had to throw his name in the hat because he's really impressed me recently. Another one, and definitely a little bit of personal bias here, but Zevi continues to impress me as an AWPer with that kind of wow factor, so to say. As my good friend Paladin put it, he is Payne's dream AWPer, with the consistency of Safi, but the boldness of Nithon. And to add that he's only 21 years of age is just a scary sight. I had the chance to win the Desperate ESO Challenger Melbourne, and to watch him win over the Brazilian counterparts out of Imperial was a pleasure, and Zevi alongside Skulls was one of the most exciting and scary duos that I've seen in a while. And in their own words of their CEO, Skulls and Zevi is the best signing in Brazilian history, which is a bit of a crazy statement, but it shows how much faith they have in these youngsters, and to be honest, so do I. Now, my penultimate honorable mention is that of Soulfly from Sangal. Since the addition of Fuzi to the Sangal roster, he has taken a lot of the limelight, but Soulfly is touted as one of the best and most promising youngsters we have seen come out of the Turkish scene since the likes of Woxic and Antares, which says a lot, and he continues to live up to the extremely high respect and praise that's been put on his name. And when you look at the recent form in the latter stages of 2022 of Sangal, where they had that dream run in the Open qualifier to get to the closed qualifier of the IM Road to Rio, it's impressive, and it only shows what kind of ceiling this guy has. I'm expecting big things in 2023. Finally, my last honorable mention that I wanted to bring up was that of Detour from Dynamo Eclot. The 19-year-old has really impressed me within the Tier 2 space, and I have a lot of confidence that he will continue to do so within 2023. There was rumours of him getting a move away from Dynamo Eclot, which I believe honestly would be the best for his career, as the numerous times I've casted him, he can play at an insanely high level, and in my opinion could make the step up into the upper echelons of Tier 2, if not further, and potentially follow in the footsteps of fellow countryman, that of Neofrag. Whilst this does seem like a big leap, I genuinely believe Detour can play at an OG level of play, and the fact that he's only 19 years of age, it's so young, is testament just how good he is. And finally, number one should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. It's Copenhagen Flames' very own Regali. Now, I had the chance to interview Regali just a few weeks ago, and I was so impressed with his demeanor, his mannerisms, and his goals that he set for the future. He's a seriously talented AWPer with the mindset of a player 10 years his senior. And if you add the wealth of experience he has gained at just 20 years of age, it's safe to say that he's destined for an extremely bright career. Having started the year Fnatic Rising, we dominated the Academy League, then stepping up into the main roster, playing at the PGL Major before being picked up by Copenhagen Flames on their rebuild that is led from the brilliant IGL as Bird from the Sky. I mean, his career's already had a lot under his belt, and I'm expecting a lot more. The form as of late for Copenhagen Flames has been nothing short of spectacular, and a large part of this is due to the Romanian superstar himself, Regali. Recent victories for Regali include a first place at CCT Central twice in a row, first place in CCT South, first place in a European Development Championship, just to name a few. And this is just the surface of how Regali and Copenhagen Flames have dominated the Tier 2 space within 2022, and in my opinion are arguably the team to beat in Tier 2. He is following the footsteps of fellow countryman, that of Lauren X, by dominating the Tier 2 space and setting himself up for a future in that Tier 1 space. Stats for Regali have been pretty astounding considering the caliber of teams he's had to play compared to some of the others on this list who have kind of mainly remained within the Academy space or maybe even the Tier 2 scene. Regali has been taking on and beating teams like Astralis with device and out-AWPing him on a number of occasions, may I add. Dynamo Eklot, Sinners, Falcons, K23, 9, and that's just to name a few. And he ends the year with a 1.2 rating overall, and the one singular event he went negative in all year was the PGL Antwerp Major, where he stood in for Fnatic. This is dominance on an international scale, and I expect it only to continue and potentially step up into that Tier 1 space heading into 2023. I'm absolutely certain that the vast majority of Tier 1, 1.5 teams will have Regali shortlisted for potential AWP replacements, especially considering there's quite a few teams that are in need of an AWP or looking for an upgrade, like your NIPs or your Sprouts, just to name a couple. When you add the consistency, the fantastic performances, the growth as a player, to the fact that he can speak English, Romanian, and Danish fluently, this is a brilliant player waiting to prove his worth, and he just needs the opportunity, and I'm damn sure he'll get it. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the list is done. 5 players in order and a few more honorable mentions as well. I feel like I've sort of covered all my bases at the very least. Of course, this list means that a few big hitters got missed off due to the rule set at the start, like Lauren X, Stairs, Zersh, Patsy, Wonderful, Manessi, just to name a few. I have absolutely no doubt that these guys will continue to impress, and probably primarily within that Tier 1 space, like they have in the latter stages of 2022. But, you know, I'd love to hear some of your suggestions. If there's any players that you disagree with, or maybe any suggestions that you think I may have missed out, I'd absolutely love to hear them. So, you know, let me know down below, and maybe in the future I may do a little bit more of a detailed video on them specifically. Who knows? For now, I want to thank you for watching. If you're new around here, please do consider subscribing, as it really does help out. Part 2 will be out in a week's time, so make sure to come back then. And, well, for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Take care.
Turn to out the Azul. Baby, I ain't in the bad moves. I could take another 42. I could use a little less you. I ain't really in the bad moves. Go sweet like you.